gotta welcome a nigga or something.
And welcome Malik Spellman to Wild Moguls TV.
What's up, brother?
How you doing, man?
I'm fine. How you doing?
Man, we had to give back. Um, got some unique viewership on our last Tupac video. But you was telling me about Tupac had an identical BMW.
Yeah, unbeknownst to the world, uh, first and foremost, all your Wild Mogul watchers out there, we really appreciate the interaction. We've reached a milestone. We are trying to get to, I think, 10,000 subscribers, so we're close. We appreciate your support. And we're going to also address some of them good jokes I had about my boots. So I got you, and I got you by name, so get ready. But in the meantime and in between time, I think it's important that we highlight some of the things that Tupac never really shared with the world. Like, for example, he had another BMW identical to the one that he was unalived in Las Vegas. He also had plans to either move to New York or Ghana, if not both. And he had a lot of future plans for gang intervention prevention, but announced to most people are not. He was heavily involved with that. Not to mention a lot of the charitable stuff that he was doing. No one knew that he was participating in. So Tupac had some plans, man, for movies and films, and he wanted to make films and movies to inspire young people to be great. And I don't know if it was along the lines of the black exploitation era, but he wanted to make some really great films, man.
Did you ever think about the Tupac faked his death situation? Did you ever entertain that concept?
You can't fake your death, either you dead or alive. And somebody like Tupac that care about people, I can best believe that if it was anything politically uh, going on with in the world, Tupac would have said something. So I don't think that Tupac would just hide his presence from the masses of the people, knowing that they're dealing with a real serious crisis out in the world, still trying to navigate our way through the streets and corridors of America. So I've never heard such a thing, but I doubt that very seriously. They wouldn't allow someone like that to just disappear. He has too much effect. You'd be better off finding Osama bin Laden probably than before you find Tupac alive.
Wow. Um, you said you helped Daz save some masters. Can you retell that story?
Reluctantly so, but since Daz is in the media lately and everybody is telling their history and their stories about how they were part of that history during death row, I decided that I should just try to share with my listening audience how on one interview I seen Daz talking about some master tapes. I believe that he said he gave to someone, and it wasn't just the tapes; that it was just empty boxes. So I had a flashback. I was like, when I worked for Quincy Jones at CBS, Steve Harvey was taping his show there with Cedric the Entertainer, a couple other people. Daz had came up to CBS and he's like, "Yo, Malik, man, where can I hide these boxes?" Now, mind you, I was walking in the building, but I recognized that blue Suburban he had because his wife Kenya at the time, I was buying a '96 Impala, and she asked me, "Malik, I want to get Daz a truck. What should I get him?" So I pointed to that truck. So that's how I was able to recognize that kind of powder blue truck. And he's like, "Yo, Malik, where can I hide these boxes at just for a minute? These masters." I was like, "Masters?" I didn't even know what a master was. I'm not into music like that. And it was a truck full of all kinds of death row music. That's what it said on the boxes. And it was filled from the front to the back. So we
Wow.
parked it, coincidentally, we parked it in the back. And I think he was a president of Death Row or something back then. We parked it in the back, and it was next to the Tupac exhibit that they had back there for Snoop and them to come back. There was like a cardboard figure of Tupac they had cut out. and a little area where they once again would allow us to smoke over at CBS.
CBS in the Valley?
No, CBS off of Fairfax.
Fairfax, okay.
I don't
Wow.
think they have a CBS in the Valley. That's another
network. It's a Radford over there on Ventura and Radford.
Okay,
I think it's
I'm not
another
familiar with
CBS.
that. I'm just familiar with one off of Fairfax.
Okay. And so, and then he left the Masters. How long did he leave him there?
Probably like overnight or something, maybe a day or 2 days. But I find it ironic because I've participated in so much stuff that evolves around history like that I could never just really recollect. But when I think back on how much I tried to help a lot of people that, in all honesty, nobody never really reached back to help me. You know, none of them. I watched them dudes do a whole lot of stuff, but I've never seen nobody reach back and help.
Yeah, that's just how this game is, man. They'll just use you and use you. And then you talked about Rick James and Don Cornelius hated each other.
Man, they was arch enemies, man. You know, philosophically and through entertainment. You know, I figured. See, Don Cornelius was kind of like a conservative entertainer. You know, that was part of Black excellence, and Rick was a little more rambunctious, a tad bit obnoxious because of the character that he portrayed. And when Rick came on the Soul Train, I think it was for the second time that Don Cornelius was kind of shocked that he made it. But I don't think Don originally believed that Rick James was worthy of the praise that he got, or he wasn't ready for Hollywood, should I say. So consequently, as a result of that, they clashed on one of those Rick James thing, and where on one of those Soul Training specials in which I believe Rick James told Don Cornelius something like, "So you're back. Don't quote me on it, but you're back. Uh, like, how'd you get here? Or whatever." He was like, "Yo, you just couldn't afford me." You know, by then Rick had blew up, so I felt Don probably felt insulted, but he was shocked, but he had to keep his composure. But they was like, you know, arch enemies of each other as far as perspectives or indifferences or style and character. But for
Yeah.
the most part, his music, Rick James was determined to show Don that, dude, I'm a star too. So,
Wow.
you know, and that's about how Don was, because when Don Cornelius had a show once, that's when they was rotating people on Soul Train. I don't know if you remember that. They used to rotate hosts. And just joking, I said, Don, man, I was doing the news, Channel 11 News as a reporter. I was like, yo, man, let me host Soul Train. And he said, man, you're not big enough yet, Malik. And it kind of hurt my feelings because he had all them other people on there that was just as talented as me, if not less talented.
Yeah.
But I understand what he said, because greatness is made over a period of time. And the people that he normally had on there were super great. But I didn't understand that then, you know, being a little cocky and thinking you're supposed to get a shot at it. At first it was an insult. But as I thought about it, one, I don't know nothing about music like that. And then two, you know, that man was running a business and he needed somebody that could make it happen.
But he felt Shamar Moore fit 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 the brand of Soul Train.
He did what?
He felt Shamar Moore was more famous than you at the time.
Well, he was far more famous than me. I'm just an activist with a reporter's twist, with a little historian mix. Them dudes is real Hollywood plus Shamar, that his name. You know, that's one of them take your bitch type niggas. You know, back then he was light skinned and muscle man, you know, so them dudes, they had the girls, so they needed somebody that can attract that audience. I'm not gonna attract no girls like them dudes. Hollywood already painted them out. You know, I attract the believers. I attract poor people and people that I love, homeless people and gang members. I'm not into Hollywood like that. Hollywood come with too many uh, principalities and spiritual wickedness in high places.
Yes, sir. So you also said Rick James sold his soul, and then the police. You said the police prison guards wouldn't even go by his cell because it was haunted.
Well, I didn't say that Rick sold his soul. Tina Marie and Rick pretty much said that,
Okay.
because Rick was going through some sort of spiritual transition, and he used to talk about this thing that would be sitting in the corner. And they would catch Rick staring in the corner, and he would say the thing wouldn't go away, and they came to collect his bill. You know, a lot of those Hollywood stars back then was making oaths with the dark side. You know what I mean? And Tina Marie and them, they knew it, but the world didn't know it. But Rick James was going through this house. He had lights flickering off and on. It get cold in there beyond your recognition. Even when he was in the hospital, the doctors and nurses was saying that his room was colder than any part of the hospital, which is ironic because hospital rooms are normally cold. Lights would flicker off and on. And when he was in, I think, the B building in Old Folsom, they said that the guards used to be scared to walk past the cell when he was there and kind of like when he left because the spirits were so high up. And even Rick knew. And he said that that spirit, whatever he made that deal with, I can't say he sold it to the devil. He might have gave it to him. I don't know. But whatever it was a dark side. But he's not the only one. You know, they had Ray Charles that tampered with the dark side. You know, you had uh,
Sammy Davis was a open
yeah,
Satanist,
and then you had Minnie
Luciferian.
Riperton, who they tried to say was possessed, but I think she was just highly talented and one in a billion. You had was it Dionne Warwick or one of them? I believe they was involved. You got a lot of people that's in that industry. You know, Sam Cooke. You got a lot. They said when Sam Cooke, they said when what's his name Hathaway passed away, they heard two people in the room. They said when Rick James used to be in the studio, that the people that worked with him, the engineers, used to just quit because it was too spooky. Certain things be taking place, equipment coming off and on. So it's a lot of that going on just to get to the top. Yeah, we dance to their music, but you know, like I say, what's your story? How'd you get there? What did you do to get there? So when you see them people getting sent a bill, you know, that's what it's from, man. They tamper with the dark side. And a lot of those artists that was coming up like Ray Charles and all them that come out to church, back then, man, you know, it was blasphemy to be a part of rock and roll or R&B. So if you came out to church and you went to singing on the road trying to make a better life for you and your family, there's a chance that you had to sign up for something you weren't ready for, or you may not have been aware of.
You hear about that Robert Johnson story at the Crossroads?
No, sir.
Yeah, it was supposed to be the first rock and roll song, and basically that movie Sinners is based on that guy who went to the he went to the crossroads in the country. They show this little road that's an intersection. It's a dirt road intersection.
That sounds like Route 66 to me. You can get your kicks on Route 66.
Yeah,
You
and
know what I
it's
mean?
and some black man, he like basically didn't know how to play the guitar or nothing. He sold his soul and became the biggest first ever rock and roll song.
Well, I can tell you this, man. You know, speaking of rock and roll, people speak a lot about Dick Clark, who, in my opinion, I don't think he ever played an instrument or did any entertaining other than introduce people. But Dick Clark, on one hand, yeah, New Year's Eve, Dick Clark, he was a great person. My mom left from where she was born and raised to go to New York just to try to get a chance to dance on the American Bandstand. That was the soul train of white people back in the days. And Dick Clark would only allow black artists to come on there. Actually, he went before Congress on a congressional hearing for it. You can look it up, in which they called him to testify before Congress because, say, like if I was the Temptations or something like that, in order for me to come on the hottest show in America, which is American Bandstand, I would have to surrender either my publishing or the whole song or some ridiculous deal that I had to make with Dick Clark personally in order to facilitate coming on his show. So he had to go before Congress because you can't make people pay to play. And there's a lot of that going on now. It's a lot of people that you think is really hot artists, and they really not. They just getting free likes or they getting pushed out to catapulted up to the top. And after a while, you just get used to them. But Dick Clark was a shrewd businessman. Anytime they take you before Congress because you dogging the black artist that bad, something ain't right about that. But we still celebrate you, old Dick.
I never knew that about Dick Clark.
Yeah, you can Google it. Yep, you sure can, brother. Dick
And
Clark, if you was a black artist, you know, them big Chuck Berrys and all them type dudes, you had to surrender your publishing or the whole record or the album or all the rights to it for perpetuity to Dick Clark just for
there's
coming on his show once. So somehow or another, he got called before Congress to a hearing. And they told him like, "Yo, what is you doing, man?" That's why he stayed looking young forever. He was balling.
Wow, I'm like so interested to see what his catalog is and what records he actually has.
Yeah,
That'll be
you
amazing to
should
see.
do the research on it, man.
I definitely will. I always kind of liked the Dick Clark.
I still like him. You know, he's a businessman, but Dick
Yeah.
Clark played by some Dick Clark rules. And if you're not knowing the history of how black people got on,
Mhm.
you know, the history of how they got put on, they had to go to some extreme measures. It wasn't like now you just get on there and you play a song or two, or, you know, you do something where you go viral. Back then, you really had to have some real talent and some real connections to get into business. Not to mention the fact that you had to roll through all these towns that wasn't pro-black, and sundown towns.
Were you around and during that that time?
Absolutely not. I'm not Methuselah. I'm a little older, but I ain't that damn old. You know, I'm a first generation of the first black people that could ride on the front of the bus. But you know, that's the baby boom era. But my mama and them, man, they used to tell me about signs they used to read. And I seen this sign before too as a kid going to my grandmama's house. It said, "Read this sign and run, nigga. If you can't read, run anyhow." I thought it was funny because I was a little boy, but my mom explained to me like, that's not a joke. That's how wicked it was. That civil rights movement coming up out of that was no joke. It's in the 60s and in the 70s and stuff like that. We not complaining about it. We just took a mental note of it.
Now, when you was coming up, you were seeing brothers and white sisters and white brothers and everybody. It wasn't. Was it different to see that, or was it
What do you mean, like interracial couples?
interracial couple and just like just co-mingling? Period.
I mean, there's never been no real super co-mingling, but there's always been black and white. You know, now whether
Mhm.
it was socially accepted or not, that was yet to be determined. But there's always been some form of coexisting amongst American people prior to all the politics that you see today that's gender based or race based and all that. Because everything back then was real. You know, I'm black and you knew you was white. I remember they had a sign that my grandmama used to show me. It said, "No blacks, no whites, no dogs, and no Mexicans" for the restaurant. So we always been in the cesspool of confusion when it came to making our way in America.
They said no dog, no whites, no
The
blacks.
sign used to say no blacks. It used to say no blacks, no dogs, and no Mexicans.
Oh,
Yeah, that's what it said. I stand to be corrected.
damn.
And you had to enter through the back door. Then I was in Georgia once going to
So you was
Atlanta.
around when it was
I
shit
mean,
like that.
I wasn't around. I was a little boy,
Yeah.
but you knew what was going on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was a grown man riding through Georgia once when I used to be in that dope game, and we seen a sign that said L.A. County Sheriff's recruiting, and it had a big corn-fed white man on there. I said, "Damn, the sheriffs from L.A. is recruiting way out here in the South." They had billboards, be L.A. County Deputy Sheriff way out in Georgia. Like, what is y'all doing down there? Because they was trying to recruit them big old dudes. You know, they got some big corn feds out there, man. That's
Yeah.
all American.
And from what I hear, they do shit like that so they don't you don't have no community connection.
Not just that, though, it's kind of hard to recruit people if you've been shot up and locked up their family. These kids in LA is not too keen on being police. Not because they have a dislike or anything for the police. It's just that their experiences are different. Some kids might want to be in law enforcement, but the peer pressure from the people they grew up with who've been victims of the police, whether it was good or bad, deters them from it. So there's a lot of different reasons why the recruitment is done for LAPD and the sheriff's department. And the reason one is they need people because there's a shortage of residents that are interested in that type of work based on the experience that we've had.
So we was talking about why are black kids not learning the curriculum and And then how did Ritalin play a role in our communities? Or what role did Ritalin play into the detriment of our community?
Well, based on my observation, the curriculum that's
All right, man. So what we was talking about the curriculum that's taught to our kids.
see the problem in California and other inner cities is that the curriculum that they teach to people in well-to-do communities is totally different than the curriculum that they teach in the inner cities. For example, the food that they serve in the suburbs is totally different than the food they serve in the urban community. Those two supermarkets are two separate supermarkets. And the curriculum they were serving in LA is different due to the fact that we have a gang issue or violence or poverty issue. And when you have poverty, you have violence. So the kids that may have went to a Fremont or a Locke or Jeff High School or something like that before they started busing people to Palos Verde and Palisades and Santa Monica, well, those people, those people are learning a curriculum that's destined for failure. I don't know if that makes any sense or not. What happened was they took the money that was supposed to be used for educating inner city youth, especially in particularly black youth, and then they started complaining that they couldn't educate these kids. They're too hyper, they too violent, they're illiterate, they're all the above statements that makes you a functioning illiterate. So what they did, they took the black mothers and said, look, you want to increase in your welfare payments? Because back in the days, you could be on welfare forever up to your kids was 18, and per child, you got a bunch of money. They don't do that no more. So what they did, they would increase your welfare payments if you got your son or daughter on Ritalin through the LA Unified School District. So that's why they came out that term, the short bus and all that. It wasn't just for kids that was mentally challenged, but the Ritalin and all that was put together in order to calm the black children down that was considered hyper. And then they took the money for the education that they're supposed to educate them with, and they started educating people from other races that didn't speak English or didn't understand the American culture in the school system. So you rob Peter to pay Paul. Mind you, we had people come from all over the world that didn't speak English, didn't know nothing about the American curriculum in the schools, none of that. So what they said was, okay, these black kids, we're going to use them as an excuse to where they can't learn, and we're gonna hit their parents with a incentive if on welfare if she takes her son and get him the Thorazine or whatever it is that they putting them on, and then consequently we're gonna take that
Ritalin.
money, Ritalin, then we're gonna take that other money and invest in educating people who didn't understand the system that was fresh here from every country.
Wow. It's a cold game.
That's what they did. And then you got to look at the curriculum that's being taught to your children. Don't just send your kids to school thinking they learning. No, they not. They getting spot, chase, mud, and Christopher Columbus discovered America. But on the other side of town, they're teaching their kids about quantum leap technology. Beverly Hills High School got a different lunch room than the high school at Fremont. The prisons in their community got a different setting than the prisons that for people in the inner city. The people in the city pay far more taxes than somebody that's a Amazon owner, something like that. I can guarantee you, me and you probably pay more taxes than most billionaires. They don't pay taxes. It's not going to happen.
Not gonna happen.
It's called recess for a reason, because the rich is out on recess like kindergartners, and we in a recession. And when they say, when y'all get it back together, we'll come off recess. That's why they say the government is in recess. What's the compound word of recess? Recession, right?
Recession, yeah.
So when they go into recess, y'all go get it together, get our money. We out playing. Then y'all go into a recession.
Damn. Just like that. Nah, it's a cold game that welfare, you know. They use that to destroy everything. Can't have a man. Can't have a man in the house if you want to get this check. Not the check, but if you want to get the housing, right? Is that how they do that?
Welfare is an institution that's become a corporation. It was public, but now it's a private corporation that should go on the stock market and be traded every day. Because what they do is with welfare and with child support, the taxpayers put aside a certain amount of money every year to cover that Medi-Cal and all that type stuff. So they give welfare to the poorest people or the poorest people, and then they run the daddy out the house, and then they send the daddy a child support bill because the mama got food stamps, but the money was already paid for the taxpayers beforehand, so they double dipping.
Wow.
If I'm a taxpayer and you take some money out of my check every week for Medi-Cal, for welfare, for public utilities or whatever, highways or whatever, and then I say, yeah, well, I'm taking care of the poor with this welfare thing. And then you come back and charge the daddy later on talking about you owe child support. And then welfare and food stamps is two different things. Food stamps come from the Department of Agriculture. It's like I ask people all the time, what is your social security number got to do with your credit? Why is that? That's your social security for the future. But people that do real business, they use EIN numbers. Like, what is the social security number that you will run for Elon Musk? What's his FICO score? Is it 850? How do you get those SoFi stadiums if you're not using public bonds that taxpayers pay for? Dude that owns SoFi and the Formula, they don't just go buy that. They get bonds for that. You and I can't. We can barely get an apartment per se. But what does your social security number, technically speaking, have to do with you? Because they use that to trace you. That's why Experian and all them being investigated by Congress right now. Because you got three different credit agencies, but only one is being used. So they slant drilling because all the home loans that come go through Experian. They get money from that. Then the car loans go through Experian. Then everything else go through them, go through them, go through them. Then they tell you no. So they're creating poverty. That's who creates poverty. The credit unions. Oh man, I got a low score. I can't get a house. Oh man, I got a low score. Ooh, they said no, but you got two other agencies on there next to Experian that nobody acknowledges. So they got a monopoly on the business, and then all the business is being sent to them. You get child support or taxes, they put a lien on your Experian account. Why is that? Who's slant drilling like that? You're getting money. Y'all slant drilling. That's what you're doing.
Slant drilling. That's what they do. That's how the rich stay rich. So now, you was telling me about a time how you almost stole the Quran.
Yeah, Allah forgive me, man. When I was in prison, first let me tell you how real fast how I was already God body and I studied with the Israelites and the 5%ers. I've been in a few churches, been baptized through Grace Jones. Dad, I believe, had a church back in the days in the hood. And over there in Hoover Hood off near Manchester.
Her brother, Noel Jones.
No, that's he come late. The father had a church at first.
Okay.
In the hood. And uh so when I went to the pen, I was walking by this brother's cell and I heard him calling the call to prayer. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. And I had never heard that before. So when I walked by the cell, I was like, say, Mike. I said, bruh, what was that you were saying? And he was like, Allahu Akbar, Allah. And I'd never heard that, nevertheless seen a black man screaming it. So when he got to, I said, man, can you do that again? And then he just started laughing. And then he opened up this book. And it was green on the outside. It had gold writing on the inside in Arabic. I'd never seen Arabic writing before in my life.
Okay.
And it had English, I think it was called like the Yusuf Ali edition or something. So I seen that book and he was showing me. I think he let me see it once to take it to the sale. So I took it there and I was looking at it and I was fascinated by it because I used to speak several languages growing up.
Uh-huh.
And I was fascinated to see the Arabic on the right and the English on the left, whatever. So I gave it back to him, and then they was gonna transfer us to the prison, to the big prisons. This was just a reception center, Chino. So I was like, man, I gotta figure out how I could steal that Quran from that brother. And I really went on a mission. I thought I was like Mission Impossible, knowing I'd have got killed. I'm crawling across the prison floor because we embarrassed. Knowing I'm thinking I'm going to escape plus steal the Quran. My mind is gone. I'm not staying there because we just got there. You ready to go as soon as you get there. You're not institutionalized to the degree that you fit in and programmed.
Yeah.
So I'm crawling across the yard. My intention, bottom line, was to sneak over to his cell, steal the Holy Quran because I wanted it so bad. I didn't know you could order one and they're going to have them when you got where you going. But I wanted that Quran so bad because of that writing, and I wanted to read it. And I got so far, and I don't know if I got scared or the realization came that, you're going to whoop your ass if you steal this Quran. Because I could barely say the Quran. So I went back, and then when I got to the prison where I was going, a couple of weeks in, they bring in the new people, they call them fish. And I'm looking, watching the bus come in like they do in the movies. And look who I see getting off the bus. The same dude that I was going to steal the Quran from and sneak off to another prison with. But if he'd have caught me, he'd probably upside my head, man. More than likely, the Muslims probably would have accepted it, like, hey, little brother, you stole that. But I literally wanted to steal it. That's how in love I was. But when I heard him calling that call to prayer, my body froze, man. It was like I went into a time portal. Then, when we got there, a brother named Kawat and another brother, I forget his name. And me and the dude that I was shackled to going to New York named Daryl at the time, we was both from New York, both going to prison. So we had something in common. We was actually handcuffed together. In the bus, when you handcuffed or going to prison, they put you in this bus and they take you through these back highways in California that you never knew existed. And they play country western, down, 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 and it'd be a big old redneck in the back of the bus in a cage like this with a big ass gun, and you just be cuffed all the way there. Then they stop at restaurants and eat, and they come out, and you be sitting on the bus like, these fools left us on the damn bus. While they went to Denny's and then they came back, but they'll kill you if you get out of pocket. So when we get to the prison, the Muslim niggas run up, woo, 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 because man, it was kind of wild and flamboyant, flashy.
Yeah.
They're like, man, you all gonna be Muslim. I already got exposed to the Quran and the prayer thing. So I'm like curious now. Yeah, I get some further learning on this. So they said, man, y'all got two names. Y'all pick which one gonna be who. He said, we got Raheem and Malik. And my boy at first, he said, I'm gonna be Malik. And then I said, I'm gonna be Raheem. And then he said, no, I'm gonna be Raheem, because I tricked him, because I wanted to be Malik.
Yeah.
I know if I went one way, he went another way.
Yeah.
I said, well, I'm gonna be Malik then. But unbeknownst to us, attributes have struggles. So his struggle went one way as Raheem, and Malik's struggle took another route, being Malik, doing what I do in the streets with the gangs and all that, collectively speaking. But the funny part was, they called him Raheem and called me Malik, and then I looked at Raheem was doing a little drinking, and I was outside doing gang convention. So I was like, what if I took his route?
Yeah.
So I had to take the attribute that was me, Malik, the one that Allah trusts with the keys to heaven and hell.
Wow.
I'm the only one that he trusts with the keys to heaven and hell. The most ugly angel. I'm the most unattractive angel there is.
Malik.
Yes, sir.
Damn. Now let's talk about the Georgia mortuary with the that was cremating bodies and giving people cement.
Yeah, man, you got to be watching when you do them cremations. It was a brother that was like a park ranger or something in Georgia. Because we used to cover a lot of these type of stories too, for the news businesses as much as we could. And there was a gentleman in Georgia that was patrolling an area in which there was a old mortuary. And one day he got called over there for some apparent reason. And he went in there and he seen a bunch of bodies inside of the mortuary that was still sitting in the same position that they were sent to the mortuary, and the place had been closed for several years. So they did their research and they started uh, going inside there, seeing different cadavers and whatnot laying around. So obviously they found some receipts that the cadavers were either supposed to have been cremated or used for medical purposes or sent to some sort of university of some sort for the purpose of young people learning to become doctors and studying about the different parts of the body. And you guys can take a look at it. It was located in Georgia. Consequently, they started finding people that were supposed to be cremated, but they weren't. And then the families was getting receipts and getting uh, those little things you put bodies in. What do you call it? Urns. But the urns was not filled with the actual remains of their loved ones. It was filled with cement, and then the bodies was being sold. So the bodies that they found was already sold but never picked up because the owner, I think he went bankrupt or left the mortuary or something like that. So the same person that was like a park ranger in that area of some sort, official, that was sent over there to check on the house, when they started doing the research with the anthropologists and the forensic scientists and the detectives, uh, the guy found his mother used to tell him, the guy who found the mortuary, his mother used to tell him, hey, your daddy left and he never came back and he just abandoned us, something to that effect. And they went through the records and he found his father's record in there, the same one that they said had abandoned him. He was a victim of the mortuary, of the mortician. And he found his father's cadaver in there and the records where his body was at. But all along, the family thought the dad had just abandoned the family. So what a coincidence. The irony of the situation is
Wow.
this guy goes to check on the house that he's called to for some whatever reason. There's cadavers in there that wasn't supposed to be there. This place been closed for years. The people that receive their cremated relatives inside of the urn got cement instead of the actual remains.
Mm,
And then this guy finds his father's body up in there as well, just on a freak coincidence.
this on a
And the
freak.
rest of the bodies were supposed to be sold to like UCLA, McHarry Medical College, Berkeley, colleges that specialize in biology and human anatomy.
Wow.
What a coincidence, man.
So you got to really watch out when you like even these body exhibits and anywhere they're just dissecting bodies. It's not necessarily legit.
I think what you really need to be more concerned with is it's important that we check on your people. If you got a relative that's a smoker or a homeless or something like that, and you haven't heard from them, you ain't got no death certificate or nothing like that, you might need to check into it. Look at the little girl that was working with, what was that, Balenciaga, one of them? And she came up as a mannequin. The little brother that was working for the modeling agencies. A lot of wickedness be going on in these different places. Even one of our viewers sent a letter in, an email, or should I say, a comment in which it happened to her son. So if you're out there in the listening audience and you're that sister that left that comment on Wild Moguls about this particular type of situation taking place in your family, we're looking forward to talking with you. We want to send our deepest condolences to you, but we also would like to have you highlighted on Wild Moguls TV so that people can see that we're not making these type of stories up.
Definitely. Definitely. Um, was there any more stories on that we had?
I
People,
can tell you this much, man. I'm sorry, Rick Ross fought a lot of spirits, whether they were demonic or not, whether he sold his soul or not, that's yet to be determined. But the fact that Tina Marie stayed down with him that long,
Rick James, you mean?
yeah, with his house being haunted, lights flickering off and on, temperatures dropping, body heart rate dropping, Rick jumping up screaming, talking about he's chasing me, and it wasn't just the cocaine. It was the fact that he cut a deal. And the game gonna send you a bill when you cut a deal, baby. And that's what's going on today. A lot of people cutting them deals. It's not just him. You got a lot of rappers today. Just sold self out for fame and fortune. I can't do it. And I would advise young people out there to do it. When you get in Hollywood, especially if you got young children that's in Hollywood, make sure you go with them and accommodate them. Because at some point, they're going to send them a bill. You don't get in $100 million club, multi-million-dollar club unless you do something strange for a little change.
People seem very concerned for Candace Owens, man, and it was like in the last video.
Candace Owens, let me tell you something about her. Candace, listen to me closely, sis. You're important, but you're not that important to those people. I'm going to say it again so you can hear me clearly. Candace, you're important, but you're not that important to those people. They'll let you get by as far as being one that's trending, but they meant what they said and they said what they meant. And they're only going to warn you, but so much. My best bet to her is to continue doing what she do and move on to the next episode because you're not going to win. And it's not worth the fight because you're by yourself. And in their eyes, they look at it like you're a part of it. So that comes with the territory. Good luck.
There it is. Appreciate you, man. Malik, thank you for being on Wild Moguls once again. Anything you want to say?
Yeah, shout out to all our listeners. We've reached a milestone. I heard all them jokes I had about my boots. No problem. I'm gonna get you back. And also, Lighter Man, we got you. Detroit, we appreciate y'all, man. No pun intended, but we really come on here to try to give you information that'll take you where you want to go. You know what I'm saying? Because we done been around the world and yeah. So wherever there's a location where there's oppressed people, we gonna speak on it, man. And that's what it is. But for all y'all that had them jokes, I got you. Don't worry about nothing. We'll be going live one day where we can all interact and then we'll be able to see who's who in the zoo. But for the most part, we love y'all. To the brothers and sisters out there, man, see if you can get somebody to press like, subscribe, and tap in, man, because we about to take you some spaces and places. Wild Mogul TV, baby, where they doing it at. I wanted to always, I try to pay homage to the greats and people who are contributors to this struggle and this life experience that we have, that we only get one that we know of on this earth. And I had the opportunity to coexist a couple of times with Easy E, Eric Wright. And Easy E, he walked up to me one day. That's when we had Biggie Smalls and Puff Daddy and them at Summer Jam. And I had that bust ass cameraman of mine named Keith O'Derrick, who, by the way, stole all my stuff, is on Upfront Production. I'll give you that much of a plug. But you can see where I interviewed Biggie Smalls or, Shaka Khan, name of F. Gary. I've interviewed people from all over the spectrum. And once I seen Easy E, and because the guy I was with at Summer Jam that day, Keith O'Derrick's bust ass, he was running with the camera to go catch up with Puffy and them. So we walked past Easy E. And then Easy E stopped. He's like, yo, Malik, man. I felt bad because back then everybody was on that fuck Easy E bandwagon. I wasn't. But everybody else was doing, the Dre thing and all that. And then he stopped me with such a humble look and he said, Malik, man, interview me, man. Interview me. But I wanted to interview him. But the buster that had the camera kept running, and by me being a reporter, I had to follow behind him. And then he was on the Hate Easy E bandwagon. I'm like, dude, you's a buster. So the moral of the story, I met with Easy E later on, either later on after that or before that. And Easy was like, yo, Malik, man, let's go to the mayor's office. That back then, Compton had a black mayor from Piru named Omar Bradley. Soldier, you need to interview him. Great story, man. Great brother. And we went to the mayor's office, and I'll never forget because I told Easy, I said, man, give me some weed, man. And Easy used to keep his weed in his sock, like in the 70s. All the players in the 70s used to keep their weed in the sock. And that fool Easy reached in his sock. He used to keep an ounce in the sock, right? That fool pulled out, gave me some weed. But the moral of the story is we went to meet with Omar Bradley because Easy E wanted to erect a eternal fountain in front of Compton City Hall to honor all the Crips and Bloods and the Mexican people that died to gang violence, man. And I hope one day that his son, Little Easy, and them can fulfill that because he was sincere about that. You know, Easy E wanted to erect something. He was down with the stopping the killing and all that, man. But Easy was the type of brother that was like an advanced businessman in terms of thoughts. You know, you can kind of take a 50 cents, a couple of other entrepreneurs, and put them in the same shell and shake it up, and you'll get an Easy E. You know, the people that got it out the trunk type, the ones that really got it from the bottom, now we hear, even a Tyler Perry, or all those people got that from Easy. You know, Easy wasn't no buster, and he had that Black and Brown Coalition thing when he put them on. Then he had Bone Thugs and Harmony. It's just the love money, you know, that little song. Then he had the Samoan community. So Easy E reached out to people. His bodyguards used to live next door to us on 92nd between Budlong and Normandy, a Samoan community. I didn't know the difference between Hawaiians and Samoans until I started really watching Easy E. But Easy E invented having a bodyguard. Not because he needed it, but he was the first one to ever have one. Nobody knew nothing about having bodyguards before Eazy-E. Nobody. He had them two big Samoan brothers that'll knock your whole crown off you. They'll make you forget your grandmama phone number. They hit you so hard. And he
The
had
Booyah Tribe.
The Booyah Tribe. And I think one of them dudes from the Booyah Tribe, rest in peace, one of the top ones, passed away, man. I knew him too. But for the most part,
one had the too long braids.
yeah, that's the one. I knew him, and then we had some that stayed on 92nd with us, and they had a little low riders and whatnot. But Easy E was the first person that kind of reached out to different communities for rap. You know, with the Samoans, with the Mexicans. The Mexicans loved Easy E. They had his back 100% against anybody. Plus, his own neighborhood had his back. Don't get it twisted. But yeah, Easy, man, if I ever get a chance to erect that statue, I'm going to do it, man. If I just got to build one in my house and honor you. Because I love you, man. Plus, they used to kind of say me and Easy resemble each other, and I put on my Lokes and my little Compton hat. You know, I got 2 babies and 4, 5 grandkids, man, that was born and reared in Compton, Santa Fe and Tucker, so you can't tell me nothing about Compton. I done been a resident in Compton, South Central, and Watts, Long Beach, Palos Verdes, Beverly Hills, Bel Air. So, like they say in the little comments, what they call him, the TK Kirk, Vlad TV?
Yeah, TK
Well,
Kirkland.
I'm the Malik Kirk of Wild Moguls TV, because we ain't even got started yet. I've seen some stuff. I've been around the block and up a couple of alleys. And I'm going to bring it to you from the streets to the suites, baby. So tap in and subscribe and press like. Leave a comment and share. Please do that for us, man. Because we're going to disseminate some information that's unlike the other channels. We're not interested in them. We're not here to bash. We're not going to disrespect our viewers. And we're not antagonists, man. We're just really trying to get some information out to try to enlighten people and keep you entertained. So until then, Wild Moguls, baby. And I got my big ass shoes on again, Balenciaga. Kiss my ass. Just for the record, for the ladies, not for the men, but for the ladies, the reason I got them big ass boots on and these big ass Balenciagas right here, because I got a big ass dick that go in it. They match. The dick and the shoes match. Have a good day.